They say if you want to find the soul of Oman, you have to head south. Most people fly, but to truly feel the distance, to watch the land transform from the rugged desert to lush subtropical green, you have to take the long way. 1,000 kilometers, 13 hours on a bus. Skirting the edge of the Rub al Khali, chasing the scent of frankincense. This is the journey to Dhofar. In this film, we explore a land shaped by trade, nature, and time. From coconut-lined streets and the historic Husn Souq to the ancient groves of Wadi Dawkah and the coastal cities of Baleed Archaeological Park and Sumhuram city, gateways to the ancient world. Every year, between July and August, monsoon clouds roll into the desert, transforming Salalah into a lush emerald sanctuary. This season is known locally as a Kharif. Drawn by this rare transformation, travelers arrive from across the region seeking a landscape unlike anywhere else in the Arabian Peninsula. Reaching here, however, is a journey in itself. While many choose to drive, the mountain passes demand caution, often disappearing into thick fog. For our trip, we chose Moscha, Oman's national bus service. At just 10 Riyal per head, it's a comfortable and affordable option, complete with Wi-Fi and regular meal stops. We arrived just as the Kharif was coming to an end, avoiding the peak crowds, yet still catching the last traces of its magic. The drizzle lingers and the waterfalls have yet to fade. Just after Tumrait, the landscape begins to open up, quietly revealing Salalah. What makes this place truly unique is its unexpected tropical heart. Coconut groves, banana plantations, and papaya trees flourish here, creating a landscape rarely associated with the Middle East. As you move through the city, open stretches of land begin to appear along the way. Here, camels move across the landscape, but they are not strays. They belong to Bedouin families, for whom these animals are not just companions, but a way of life. The herd spread across the grass, all on their feet, slowly feeding, moving as they graze unhurried and steady. For generations, these camels have been part of daily life here, woven into movement, memory, and survival. And in moments like these, Salalah feels less like a city and more like a place where life, tradition, and nature continue side by side. Simple wooden huts and vibrant stalls emerge from the shade of tall palms. These are the true local gems, unpretentious, colorful, and bursting with the scent of ripe harvest. There's a beautiful transparency here. You can see the market stalls, and just behind them, the very farmlands where this produce is grown. These open-air markets bring the bounty of Dhofar soil directly to you, while they overflow with everything from tangy pineapples to crunchy sugarcane. The undisputed star of the show is the fresh coconut, cool, refreshing, and served straight from the shell. Beside the coconuts, you will find piles of extra sweet Dhofari bananas, shorter and more flavorful than the varieties we usually find in supermarkets. Most stalls display clear price lists, and while prices are generally fixed, a friendly smile often opens the door for a little light-hearted haggling. Whether you're a local or a traveler, a stop here in the late afternoon heat is a quintessential Salalah experience. It's not just shopping, it's experiencing the generous fertile side of southern Oman. Shopping in Salalah doesn't end at the fruit stalls. To truly understand the city's heritage, one must visit Husn Souq, also known as the Haffa or Frankincense Souq. As one of the oldest and most authentic markets in Oman, this historic site is where the soul of Omani culture is most palpable. Whether you know it as a Luban or Bakur Souq, the air here tells a story. It's a world filled with the aromatic scents of pure frankincense, delicate glass bottles of oud perfumes, and fragrant essential oils that have come to define Omani hospitality. Wander deeper into the alleys of the souk to discover vibrant displays of traditional silver jewelry, intricately designed khanjars, and hand-woven textiles. You'll also find rows of traditional cosmetics, including high-quality Yemeni henna, valued for its deep, long-lasting color and its use in creating intricate patterns. Beside them, earthy spices like cardamom and saffron blend with local herbs, their scents mingling with the smoke of clay burners glowing with charcoal. A visit here is an unforgettable sensory journey, a chance to witness craftsmanship that has remained unchanged for generations. But to truly understand the essence of this scent, we have to go beyond these market walls. Because what fills the air here does not begin in the souk. It begins far away in the silence of the desert. Of the 4 UNESCO sites that define this land, we are following 3, spanning from the desert to the coast. While the inland oasis of Shishur remains a tale for another time, we head first towards the shadows of Wadi Dawkah, before turning back toward the ancient ports of Baleed and Sumhuram. Wadi Dawkah is spread across nearly 3,500 acres. This vast natural reserve is home to the world's largest protected forest of Boswellia sacra, the legendary frankincense tree. These are trees shaped by survival, growing in the harsh alluvial bed of the Wadi. They endure extreme heat, dry winds, and long seasons without rain. From the bark of these trees emerge a golden resin, frankincense. Harvested here for thousands of years, this resin once fueled one of the most important trade networks in the ancient world. Caravans carried it across deserts to Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Europe. Wadi Dawkah stands as one of its most vital locations, a living link to a trade that shaped civilizations. What makes a visit here truly special is witnessing the process itself. Look closely and you will see small incisions along the bark. From these cuts, the resin slowly emerges, forming delicate droplets often called tears. It's a patient process, one that has remained unchanged for millennia. A quiet collaboration between nature and the hands that harvest it. The quality of this resin is remarkable. Even years after it's harvested, its fragrance remains rich, deep, and unmistakable. A reminder of why the small golden tear was once valued more than gold itself. Today, this ancient tradition continues, carefully preserved and protected. Through the stewardship of Oman, these trees are maintained using sustainable practices ensuring that the finest frankincense continues its journey from this land to the world. But what makes this effort even more meaningful is that preservation here is not limited to institutions alone. Visitors too can become part of the story. Through conservation initiatives at Wadi Dawkah, it is possible to sponsor a frankincense tree, contributing directly to its protection and continued cultivation. Each tree carries its own identity, making the connection deeply personal. Standing here surrounded by these resilient trees, you begin to understand something deeper. The story of Salalah is not just in its green mountains, but also here in the quiet strength of the desert. This is only where the journey begins. To reach the great markets of the ancient world, this resin had to travel far from these valleys. From the quiet heart of the desert to where the scent first met the salt of the Arabian Sea, to one of the greatest ports of its time, Baleed Archaeological Park. This is not just a historical site, it's a complete experience, a place where archaeology, maritime history, and nature come together along the calm waters of Khor Baleed Lagoon. Once a natural harbor, this coastline welcomes ships from across the ancient world. If you are planning a visit, late afternoon around 4 p.m. is ideal. The light softens, the heat eases, and the ruins begin to glow with a quiet warmth. What you see here today are the remains of the ancient city of Zafar, a port that existed long before Islam, dating back nearly 4,000 years. From this very coastline, one of the world's most precious commodities began its journey, frankincense. Harvested in the valleys of Wadi Dawkah, these desert tears were shipped from Zafar to Africa, India, and China, connecting this quiet corner of Oman to a vast global network. Travelers from centuries ago left behind vivid descriptions of the city. Marco Polo described it as a place of great size and splendor, where the frankincense trade was so valuable, merchants could earn extraordinary profits. The best way to explore the vast grounds is by buggy, a relaxed ride through what was once a thriving medieval city. Further ahead, the city begins to take form. Defensive walls stretch across the landscape, not just to guard against invasion, but also to protect the city from seasonal flooding during the Kharif. Nearby stands the imposing remains of the citadel Husn Baleed, a fortified complex that once oversaw trade and protected the city's elite. Built with stone, plaster, and coral, it reflects a deep understanding of both environment and defense. From here, the city was watched, protected, and governed. Scattered across the site are the remains of homes, merchant houses, smaller mosques, and traces of industry. Even today, fragments of imported ceramics found here hint at how far-reaching Zafar's connections once were. This was never an isolated city, it was part of something much larger. You can see the remains of the horse stables. Only foundations remain today, but centuries ago, the space would have been alive with movement, the sound of hooves, the energy of trade and the presence of Arabian horses that were as valuable as the incense itself. Close your eyes for a moment and let the silence of these stones fade into the puzzle of a living, breathing fortress. Among the most significant remains is the great mosque of Zafar. Dating back to the 9th century, this vast structure once held rows of limestone columns along with spaces for gathering and ritual purification. Archaeological studies reveal that this mosque once held 144 limestone pillars. While time has brought many of them down, some have been carefully restored, allowing us to walk through the echoes of what once stood here. At the center lay an open courtyard where the community gathered, and nearby spaces for ablution where worshippers prepared for prayer. Even in ruins, there's a quiet sense of order here, a rhythm you can still feel as you walk between the columns. A reminder of a time when this space was filled not with silence, but with voices, movement, and devotion. Not every story here is one of trade and movement. Some are far more still, a symmetry, simple, weathered, and deeply humbling. As you walk through the ruins of Al-Baleed, you will start to see pieces of daily life everywhere. Excavations have turned up things like pottery, oil lamps, coins, and jewelry. Simple items from a city that was once a busy center for trade. To get the full story, you should head to the Museum of the Frankincense land. Inside, the history becomes much clearer. The museum features exhibits on Oman's seafaring past and ancient trade routes, including detailed models of the landscapes you just walked through. Before you go inside, take a look at the large model of Wadi Dawkah located just outside the museum. It's a great visual of how connected this whole region used to be. As we were leaving, we saw a royal motorcade pass by. One striking red car stood out, a color reserved for the Sultan's guard. It was a brief but powerful moment, showing that while ancient Zafar is now in ruins, the country's leadership and identity are still very much alive. This was a city of trade, faith, and global connection. Standing here, it's easy to imagine the ships leaving these shores to carry frankincense across the world. But Al-Baleed is only one part of the story. About 40 kilometers to the east lies another ancient gateway, Sumhuram. As we approach the limestone remains of the ancient city of Sumhuram, the landscape begins to soften. The arid terrain gives way to patches of green. A herder watches quietly over his flock, a scene that feels unchanged for centuries. We pass through the city gates but pause as a caravan of camels crosses our path. A young calf breaks away from the herd. It rests for a moment, then with a sudden burst of energy, returns to its mother's side. In the shadow of an ancient city, life continues, simple and timeless. Perched on a limestone cliff, Sumhuram overlooks the tranquil waters of the Khor Rori lagoon. This lagoon is fed by the famous Wadi Dawkah, where fresh water flows down from the mountains to meet the Arabian Sea. This created a protected natural harbor that made trade here possible. Founded in the 3rd century BCE by the kingdom of Hadramaut, it was from here that the ships carried precious frankincense across the Arabian Sea and into the Indian Ocean, connecting Oman to distant civilizations. If Baleed Archaeological Park tells the story of a thriving medieval port, Sumhuram takes us even further back to the early days of the frankincense trade. Local traditions speak of a legendary connection to the Queen of Sheba, with some believing this was once her summer residence, a place from which she oversaw the trade. History may place her in another time, but the story remains, carried through generations, somewhere between legend and memory. The entrance to the city was more than just a gateway, it was a statement. 3 successive wooden doors once guarded this passage, controlling every movement in and out. Hidden with it was a smaller postern gate leading through a narrow internal corridor, a design that reflects both strategy and precision. Over nearly 9 centuries, this gate was rebuilt and expanded multiple times, adapting, evolving, just as the city itself did. Just beyond the entrance lies one of Sumhuram's most intriguing structures, a monumental building constructed around a deep well. At nearly 25 meters, this well would have been a vital source of water, sustaining life within these fortified walls. Spanning roughly 400 square meters, it remains the largest structure in the complex. What we see today is only a partial reconstruction. Its original walls long lost to time and carefully restored through excavation. And beyond these monumental spaces was everyday life. Multi-story homes once lined these streets with living quarters above and workshop storage areas and livestock spaces below. A self-contained city designed for both survival and prosperity. Scattered across the site are pieces of lapidarium, a collection of ancient stone artifacts. You can still find the heavy hand mills and mortars used for grinding grain and basins carved from solid rock. They are the tools of daily survival, a reminder that for every ship that left the harbor, there were people here working, cooking, and building a life. Walking through these ruins, it's clear that Sumhuram was built on more than just commerce. Within these weathered stones once stood the Temple of Sin, a sacred space dedicated to the moon god. Described in the 1st century maritime guide, the Periplus of Erythraean Sea, Sumhuram, known then as Moscha Limen, was a designated harbor for the prized frankincense of Zakynthos, the ancient name for this region of Dhofar. These ancient accounts speak of a harbor under divine protection, where incense could rest openly on the quays untouched, no guards, no watchmen, for it was said that even if a single grain was taken unlawfully, the ship itself would be unable to sail, as if it's held back by the will of God. Perhaps it was here in the presence of Temple of Sin that the trade and belief became one. Today, the temple itself is no longer visible, but traces of that devotion have not been lost. They survive in the objects left behind, carefully preserved beyond these ruins. Many of these discoveries now rest within the Museum of the Frankincense Land, at Baleed Archaeological Park, where the story of Sumhuram continues through what it left behind. And then, almost quietly within these ruins, a lone frankincense tree still grows. It may not belong to the original city, but its presence feels deeply connected to this place, a reminder of what once defined Sumhuram, the trade, the wealth, and the fragrance that carried its name across the seas. Look closely at the rocks and you will see the Dhofar agama. The females and younger males are brown to blend in with limestone. However, the dominant males can turn their heads a bright electric blue. You'll often see them doing push-ups on the ancient stones. This is how they show their strength and defend their territory. The city itself rises on a flat-topped hill about 25 meters above sea level, overlooking the waters that once defined its existence. From here, the land falls sharply into steep slopes, marking the southern gateway of the city, opening toward the coast. It provides natural protection while guiding seasonal waters toward Khor Rori, an advantage both defensive and practical. It is here that the journey of the resin truly met the world. For centuries, this was a gateway to the world. But by the 5th century AD, the city's story began to end. A massive sandbar formed at the mouth of the lagoons, sealing it off from the ocean and making the port inaccessible. Eventually, the city was abandoned to the desert winds. Today it is quiet, the ships are gone, and the harbor is sealed, but the land still holds the memory of a world that once began right here.